All right, we're gonna, as the title says, inspect a DR-Z250 shock absorber. The DR-Z250 ran till 2007, I think 2001 to 2007 in this country, and which is the United States. Great little trail bike and a fully adjustable suspension, rear shock included. And on ours, like probably all of them that are out there, they're severely worn out. And the sad part is, this shock, which I don't know if you can still buy new, and if you could, you certainly wouldn't want to. You could buy the whole bike for the price of that probably, is shot. It's leaking out oil. There's no nitrogen left in it. It's no good. And this is not as common of a bike to find aftermarket resources like a replacement shock so easy. It's really kind of long compared to some shocks from the mounting hole to mounting hole. And Suzuki did not design this to be rebuildable, even though it totally is. And there's nowhere to put nitrogen back in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to show how to take this apart as far as you can, inspect it to see if it's worth sending off to a suspension specialist company. And we're going to use Cogent Dynamics for this. We're going to take this over to them and see if they have the resources to actually rebuild this. And we're just going to kind of go over that. So if you have the same situation where you want to bring this cool little trail bike back to life and you don't want to spend $1 million on some kind of fancy shock absorber for a trail bike, we're going to see if we can rebuild this one for a few $100s. So let's go ahead and start cleaning this up and taking it apart, and we'll show you kind of what to look for to see if it's even worth your while. So the first thing we'll start to check here, sometimes on older bikes, somebody turned them in too far. You want to make sure, this is the compression one here, that this stuff still moves freely. And like if we were going to tear it apart now, you can go ahead and say back this out to its lightest setting. Typically when servicing suspension, you'll start out with the adjusters backed all the way out to the softest position. So same thing down here on the rebound. This style doesn't really click. It just turns, but this turns freely, softer, harder. So all that feels pretty good. Like I said, you know, these things can get corrosion. Usually what gets them is somebody cranked them down too hard one way or the other and ruined them, but those seem okay. So next, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but you want to clean as much as you can. You will never be able to get all the dirt out of this until you actually kind of disassemble it. But go ahead and clean as much as you can to start with. And then as you work your way through it, you can clean a little more. So the next thing we'll do is loosen these up. If you haven't done this already, it would be easier to go ahead and loosen these when they're in the bike. Another thing that people tend to severely over tighten. If not, you can clamp down this end of the shock in a vise and loosen them that way with a spanner wrench. So then we'll go ahead and back this off all the way. And then you may want to just note the way this orientates before you take it apart. It's pretty straightforward, but just in case you don't want to confuse yourself, it goes like that. And then you'll slide the spring back. And then you'll slide the spring seat back, and then these pieces here that lock it into place will come out. And that's what actually retains it on the shock. And this just slides off. And then slide the spring off, and then you can kind of get an overall view of what was underneath here, and this will allow you to clean a little more also. If you're not going to change your spring rate or anything when you're doing this, you also might want to measure the distance your spring was at on the shock, so you can just put it right back to where it was, or you could set your sag and start all over. But just to know, if you want to have it at the exact same spot, just measure it before you take it off. Okay, you're gonna look for corrosion down here on the shaft, and then kind of a hidden area. We'll move this over to the vise, and we'll remove this cap here so we can see the actual shock seal, just in case there was water or something underneath of here that was creating corrosion or trapping anything. But on this guy here, you can see like I can push this a little ways, and then all of a sudden it's like you can just feel it, like there's no oil. It's just moving freely. No nitrogen. It doesn't return. It's just shot, like we said. So we'll go ahead and throw this in the vise, pop this cap off, check that out, and then we'll be ready to send this thing on. All right, so now that we've got our shot cleaned more and set up in this vise, we're gonna pop this cap up and just check to see if there's any additional corrosion or anything we missed or dirt underneath of there. And just kind of be careful when you're doing this part, because you don't wanna, if you damage or nick this shaft and you put your new seal in, it's gonna go right in there and it's gonna destroy it. So, I'm just going to kind of work it back and forth so it sort of comes out evenly. And the phone always rings when we shoot videos, so I'm sorry. Alright, so that's up. And now you can see down in here, it still looks like the chrome plated shock shaft. Nothing too crazy in there. I mean, you can definitely still see, like, you can actually see the oil leaking past this thing on this shaft right here. So it's just, that's why it was just leaking sitting there on the bike. So all that looks pretty good. So at this point, we'll just throw those pieces back on and we'll take it over to Cogent, and then that's when we'll know for sure, after the suspension technicians look at it, that yep, because they're going to have to modify this thing to recharge it with nitrogen, and we're just going to have them put it back to stock form, no valving or no different spring rates or anything, just so it holds its nitrogen and oil in and works like it did when it was new. And we'll be good to go. So hopefully they'll fix it, and we'll follow up with getting it back and installing it on the bike. Alright, so I just got back from picking this shock up at Cogent Dynamics there. I'll put a link in the description. They have a super clean, super professional operation they're running over there, and seem to do great work at a great price, so I really, really appreciate that. The old non-serviceable port here, or the shock cap that would not allow you to refill this with nitrogen, has been replaced. Now we have a serviceable nitrogen fill port. We have our shock with a brand new bumper down there, and everything else has been went through on the inside, brought back to OEM specs, so it should perform like a brand new shock. Way better choice than, you know, really any of the other choices I could find out there. So yeah, for suspension needs, performance, or just fixing something up, restoration, highly recommend those guys over there at Cogent. And hopefully you found this somewhat entertaining and helpful, and I'll catch you on the next video.